This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. We're going to have a roll call vote. We're going to start with Mary. I need a motion to open the meeting. I apologize.
No, you
No?
don't.
Mary, go ahead, take it.
Mary Maslowski here.
Donna,
Donna Kalanick here.
Kathy,
Catherine Green here.
Robert,
Robert Jones here.
John,
John Ketchum here.
and David Nixon here. Okay, is there any public comment?
Dave, I have to read those rules.
I know,
You ready?
go.
Fast and Furious. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GLC 30A Section 18 and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Harwich Community Preservation Committee on Thursday, March 11, 2021 at 6 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website, www.harwich-ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: on Channel 18 or by watching the simulcast on http://harwich18.dns.org/cablecast/public/L for live.aspx ? Channel 1 or channel ID = 1. Good luck. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the Town of Harwich's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. The end. Go.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, now, Mr. Ketchum, is there anybody for public comment, please? Okay, I'm going to turn the agenda mix it up just a little bit because the town administrator is here and I'm sure he's got another meeting he has to attend later. So anyway, we'll go down to new business, the discussion with the town administrator. I had a long and in-depth discussion with the town administrator a few days back, and it went well, and I'm going to let Joe fill you in on that particular thing if he wishes to speak.
So, sure, we've had so many conversations, I'm not entirely sure which you'd like me to address first.
This is about access to the finance director and access to yourself. And I'll take it, Joe, for a moment, please. The last meeting, Bob brought up a question about whether or not the grant agreements, we had a policy for grant agreements. And I said we didn't have a policy, but we have a procedure. Now, I couldn't go into depth on that procedure because we have a new administration in place, and I hadn't had the opportunity to talk to the town administrator. So in this discussion, I went in, we discussed access to the various things that the CPC needs. One of the critical ones was not only him, and he was willing to give us access, but the other was to the finance director. And he signed off in giving the CPC chair the access to the finance director. I have had it in the past, but I've wanted to make absolutely sure with a new administration, everybody was on the same page. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make one slight correction.
Sure.
Excuse me, the finance director and I our peers and colleagues in government, and I go to great pains to make everyone aware that Carol does not report to me. I don't report to Carol, but Carol and I report to the board. And so we continue to work in that collaborative manner. And yes, as we discussed, I would affirm that administration and finance will continue to support Community Preservation Committee as well as we do, and no different than Capital Outlay Committee, which have both have connections to administration, if you will, through appointments, and no different than we try to partner with the Finance Committee, which is purely on the legislative side of the column. So you have our commitment, you have our support, because we're all working together to get through town meetings. So no questions on that.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And Bob, we are going to continue, when I spoke to the finance director and to the town administrator, the procedure we have in place as far as the grant agreements, those agreements come from KP Law. That entire scenario is going to continue. So if that helps with that question that you asked.
Good, thank you.
Okay, for the board members, is there any other question for the town administrator about this particular subject? That would be access to CPC through his office and the finance director's office. Donna?
Yeah, I thought that the discussion that we had the last time was more about, having policies and procedures that guide the CPC around applications coming in, when things should be run through legal, and when we should have grant agreements and or award letters. So, I saw that there was a follow-up from Robin Kelly with some very old town meeting article information. And that's really how this whole discussion started, right? Because we were unclear as to whether or not it was okay to do work on somebody else's property through the town of Harwich, what the legal and insurance liability was. And so I thought, those were the issues that we were seeking more clarification on, about what do we do when we need to know whether or not, we're moving forward in a responsible way, and when we think that a legal opinion might be necessary. Now, David, you thought that the department head, in this case, Ms. Kelly, should have come with that legal opinion already. And Ms. Kelly told us that that legal opinion was supposed to be requested through the CPC. So I thought those were some of the issues we were seeking clarification on.
Donna, I understand what you're saying. And what I'm saying now is the process we have in place, we're going to continue. It's not the CPC's warrant. That warrant belongs to the Board of Selectmen. And every article that goes on that warrant goes for review through KP Law. Now, there's no Esquire after my name, so I don't know if that's the proper procedure or not. Go ahead, Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But to the member's point, not to get into the facts that what you folks were dealing with before with the department head, but what I've confirmed with your chair is that there is a standard policy or procedure, I'm not exactly sure which, but any department or committee that is seeking legal advice goes through administration, given that council is a direct report to the board. Having said that, it's a very straightforward process where the chair would delineate the types of questions that would be asked. And I have never rejected a request for counsel. So if it's the intent of the Community Preservation Committee going forward, that you want to incorporate legal review as part of your proceedings, I would simply say that you work through the chair, the standard request comes in, we can keep track of it, and the requests have never been denied. And so, and Mr. Chairman, you can speak to that given the conversation you had today and we'll be having next week with council. So I hope that adds to the committee's relief on that question.
Does that help, Don?
Yeah, well, it sets forth the process by which we should ask for legal assistance if we need it, whether or not the CPC decides that applications should be reviewed by legal prior to moving forward, accepting them or voting them is, I think, a different discussion. And certainly, you know, the town administrator could weigh in on whether he thinks that's a good practice or not. In some cases, you know, we know they're pretty straightforward, but we've had a couple that have become complicated in the last application period.
And that's correct. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps to add to that or to address that, and the chairman and I have spoken on this. I've actually spoken to another one of your members who is the presiding officer of another committee, and we'll be leaving this call to affirm this process at the Finance Committee meeting in just a moment. But with regard to committees such as yours and Capital Outlay Committee, I've indicated to the selectmen and then department heads, and I'll be reaching out to committee chairs as well, that Assistant Town Administrator Megan Eldridge and I will be reaching out within weeks after the conclusion of our annual town meeting on May 8th to initiate a process of review. So any department or other committee that is entertaining capital requests and or community preservation requests, I'm having them work with administration up front. And that's to reintroduce the Board of Selectmen in the process, meaning I know you folks have had issues with past applicants. I know Finance Committee and Capital have had issues where it's unclear who the real applicant is or whether the town through the Board of Selectmen support that. And so Megan and I are working on correcting that process. So the process starts earlier so that I know you folks traditionally do a lot of your work starting in August. With a deadline of October 1st for your initial submissions. And so that's why Megan and I are looking to start our process as early as the end of May or June of this year. And so I think that's a good time for us to, as we have these conversations, see if there are issues that arise at the administrative level if legal review is necessary. And certainly as it works through community preservation and Capital Outlay Committee, as those committees determine the need can be met through administration.
Thank you, Joe, for that response. Are there any other questions for the administrator from the board? Elizabeth.
Thank you. I'm not sure this is for Joe or whether it's for us to discuss, but I was also thought we were debating about how restrictive or descriptive we were allowed to be in the grant agreements.
That'll be a discussion for us to have. Anybody else? Mr. Powers, thank you very much for coming tonight. I appreciate it. The board appreciates it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good night, folks, and thanks again for your efforts. Town meeting is 58 days away, and we'll get there. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Okay, the next thing I have for you is I had a long conversation with John Giorgio today, town council. I'm going to meet with him next Monday at 10 o'clock. Actually, Tuesday at 10 o'clock, looking at the schedule. And the three issues that we had discussed before, C6, HV1 and 2, I'm going to ask each member about those particular topics. If they have questions they want me to direct to John Giorgio. So we'll start with John Ketchum.
I don't have anything offhand to ask you to ask John Giorgio. Thank you.
Kathy Green. Donna.
David, for the public's benefit, could you actually say what those projects you're referring to are? Because they may not know what C6H.
Okay, I don't have those in front. I just have the numbers for what the applications are I'm working on. And Jan's jumping over to grab them now to let them know.
C6 is the Veterans Home and Dentist Project.
Okay, let's start right there. Let's start right there. We'll go back to John. John Ketchum, do you have any questions about the dentist or veterans project?
For the town attorney.
Yes.
Questions for the town attorney. I do not.
Okay, again, Kathy Green.
No, I don't have any other questions except what Donna has been saying all along, which is about the deed. So,
Okay. Now, Donna, go ahead.
Okay, so my very specific question is whether or not the deed restriction that will be held by the town of Dennis is sufficient to meet the requirements of the town of Harwich, or does the town of Harwich have to be a deed restriction holder as well?
Okay, Donna, would you send me an email for that specific language that you're
Yes.
asking? I just want to make sure we get it. I get it right. That's all.
No, and I think the other one that kind of goes with that is at what point are funds able to be released in that project? Like, does it have to wait for the deed restriction to be recorded?
So we're looking for a time frame on how that mechanism works.
Correct. Yeah. Particularly in this case, because the project is, essentially almost finished.
Okay. That takes care. Anything else on that, Donna?
No, thank you.
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, along that lines about being almost finished, the request, as I remember it, was to help build this project. But if they've already paid for the project and everything's done, it seems to indicate that money will just go into general funds. Is that allowed with CPC money? Or CPA money?
They have to meet what the request of the article is, the application. Now, I can't answer, I don't know, again, there's no Esquire after my name, I can't answer that question. I can ask, but again, would you send me an email and be specific in the question you want asked? And that way we won't lose any interpretation anywhere.
Okay.
Fair enough, Bob? Okay. Elizabeth.
I'm good. Donna handled it beautifully.
Okay, thank you. Mary.
So my only slight clarification on Donna's is I think we can ask council if it's appropriate to put a provision in that the funds will not be released unless and until an appropriate deed restriction is placed on the property. Right? I think that's the
Mary?
I'll type it to you in email to you.
Thank you. It's either that or you're more than welcome to be on the call.
Thank you. I have enough calls that week.
I got it. All right, so send me an email, please. Okay, that takes care of C6.
You know,
Um,
is caller one Joseph?
Yeah. I just wanted to let Dave know that I'm on the phone.
Oh, geez, Joe, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were there.
I just, yeah,
Do you have anything do you have any questions?
no, I know the project pretty intimately, and I go back to everyone else. I think Donna has put all the information, questions to hand that I had as well. So I'm fine with this one.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, you back home yet?
No, I'm not.
Did I
have my
spell
pain.
Joe's name right? I put Joe's name up there. Did I spell it right?
I'm on the phone, so I can't see it. I don't know. It should be MCP as in Papa, ARLAND.
That's
Yep,
correct.
okay.
You got it right. All right, going on to the next one, Jan.
HP1 is East Harwich Methodist Cemetery Gravestone Conservation and Preservation Project.
Okay, so next round. Any questions for the attorney on that particular topic? John?
Well, I guess my question is probably the same question we all were talking about last time is what is the actual liability of the town for work being done on that property? Probably someone else can articulate it better than me, but that's my question. And the question I asked last time specifically was, what does the town do now about such things like somebody mowing the lawn, a town employee mowing the lawn there? How is that covered? How is that liability dealt with now?
That's a tough one, John. That should have been asked before we voted that article.
I did ask it last time.
Was there an answer?
Not really.
No.
Yeah. Okay, I'll see what I can do. Kathy? Okay, Donna?
So I guess to John's point or your point about we should have known the answer to that before we voted it, this is where I think like when we have these unclear applications, we really need the legal opinion before we make a vote, right? Because we're making votes without having all of the facts and maybe making decisions we wouldn't make. And I'll stop there on this particular one. Beyond the liability of the town, you know, I believe that we should have a grant agreement. I think that potentially the grant agreement should be with both the cemetery commission and the church. And I guess I would ask for clarification from Mr. Giorgio about what needs to be in this grant agreement in order to ensure that, you know, we're doing work somewhere where it's okay for us to do work and that the town is protected.
I'm gonna cut you up there for this simple reason. We can't get there yet. We have to know if the Board of Selectmen are gonna support the article to put it through, and then what happens at town meeting. It may get voted down. After that is when we'll put the grant agreements in place. Now I have access to the town's attorney. I didn't have that access before.
Well, I guess
So
my
the
issue is
circumstances have changed.
if anybody's watching our committee meetings and these questions come up on town meeting floor, we're not going to be able to answer them.
We shouldn't be answering questions on town meeting floor for the applicants. It's up to them to do the due diligence to provide the information to us. If they don't, and that was the issue with Robin and legal, my continuous stance has always been, it's up to the applicants to provide the information. Robin said she couldn't get access to the legal department. I found that unacceptable. That was because of the change going on within administration. That's been cleared up for obviously tonight. So you're all, the whole board's aware of it. We now have access to the legal department. So when the time for the grants come up, no question, we'll ask whatever we need to ask for those grants, but we have to get there first.
Okay, then I guess my question would be that he looks at that old town meeting article that was provided by Ms. Kelly subsequently, and whether or not he believes that that, you know, provides the legal standing in order for the town to be the applicant and do work at this location. I do think these questions are going to come up on town meeting floor, and quite frankly, I voted against this because I didn't have the information I needed. So I'm going to just stand on that.
Well, there's no hook to be on. So we vote as our conscience dictates.
Yeah.
It's simple. So there's no hook to be on. Are you all set, Dawn?
I'm all set.
Okay. Robert.
So actually to follow up on Donna is, does that old town meeting warrant, does it give us permission to do this project?
John Giorgio will answer that question.
Okay, I just want to make sure that question is going to be asked.
Right.
Because when I saw that article, it almost sounded like they were going to take of the cemetery. And I checked, and certainly no deeds has ever passed.
Right.
And that's for a cemetery. It's still clearly, as far as the county is concerned, it's still a church's property.
Okay, okay. Bob, put that in, again, into an email for me, please.
Okay.
All right. Anything else on that?
That's good.
Elizabeth.
So maybe this is where we discuss if we have the legal right to make the grant agreement say what we want it to and to cover it. You know, I mean, obviously those of us that approved this approved it with the understanding that in the agreement it would state clearly that the town, you know, who's liable, who's insured, yada yada yada. So if we don't, so I think the question is, and it's for anything, do we get to be that specific in a grant agreement? That's my question for legal, is how specific are we allowed to get?
I got it. Thank you, Elizabeth. Mary.
David, I think there are two issues, right? The grant agreement issues are secondary. They shouldn't come forward until after town meeting. But to Donna's point, we should know the answer to those legal questions long before it goes to town meeting, because once town meeting takes a vote, you're going to have a whole other
That's it.
bee in a bonnet if we can't expend the money because town council gives us an opinion that's contrary to what we've originally voted. We should be getting that opinion ahead of time from town council, whether it's using CPC legal administrative funds or whether it's town legal administrative funds, because to the extent town council gives us an opinion that says we shouldn't be funding that project, I think it would behoove the board to do a rescission and withdraw, and at a minimum withdraw support on town meeting floor if we don't have the right to do it. So I was like Donna, I didn't vote for this. I didn't prepare a motion for it originally because I wasn't in support of it, because I didn't think we had enough information. And I'm still not comfortable with, the church just coming in and saying they support it. Until somebody fully vets that special act and the deeds that go along with the special act and any case law that follows from the 1940s. We don't know what that's going to result in. So to me, again, I think that question really is something that should be asked now, not after town meeting. Once town meeting takes a vote, it's a whole nother level of hurt that we're going to be going through in order to not fund that project. So 2 cents worth.
Okay, and again, your concerns in an email, please, and I will raise those concerns. Joe?
I'm good, Dave. Everything has been addressed for me by the other members.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Jen?
HP2, we didn't vote to support, so there isn't really a question on the fencing.
HP2 is gone.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Jen.
Currently gone.
Currently. Okay. Just as a point of information, there was a question, I don't know who raised the question, and it was about Sand Pond, whether the town owns Sand Pond or not. Donna went through the records and found information from 1978. All right, I gotta go into my phone. Please bear with me. March 5th, 1959. Sand Pond was taken by eminent domain by the town of Harwich. And she has the deed for it. So the question on whether or not the town owns Sand Pond has been answered. And that information has been sent to John Giorgio. So, any other board members have a question about that? Hearing none, we'll move on. So under old business, discussion of the grant agreements. John, you have the floor.
Well, I don't have much to say about the grant agreements, except that some of us, me in particular, have little to no experience in municipal government. And so I don't know where the landmines are. Some other people on the board have a pretty good idea where the landmines are and know how to point out or know where to look for problems. I don't. And so my thought about all of this is what I think Donna had to say about the town of Brewster, which is that they have legal counsel review the proposals up front. And for me, I personally would feel a lot more comfortable if we had our own independent counsel, did not have to depend on the town manager and or the Board of Selectmen to decide that it's okay for us to have legal counsel. But if we had legal counsel and we had a budget for legal counsel to review these things and point out to us in a way that we can all understand and have that information up front, I would feel a lot more comfortable with that, honestly. I would be very much in favor of going in that direction. And I don't know who the right legal counsel is. I guess in Brewster, it's the same counsel that is the town uses and whatever. But I think we should be able to have those opinions up front. And it seems to me a lot of what people have had to say this evening supports that idea. So that's my thought.
Thank you, John. Joe Parkland.
McFarland.
McFarland.
I don't have anything to add to that, to what John had to say. I agree with John.
Mary.
So David, I agree. It's the reason that I have said we should put money aside for administrative costs every year so that we have legal funds in case we need them. If we have our own legal funds, there shouldn't be any problem with us seeking our own legal counsel. And as long as town council feels that they can review documents for CPC without being in conflict with their representation of the town, there's no reason that they couldn't do it. I'm sure that's the situation that Don is dealing with over in Brewster. So, you know, going forward, I would support that as a practice, using council ahead of time, clear up these issues before we're voting on them so that we have our own opinion. I understand the reason why you want the applicants to come forward with the opinion, but that's not the way legal opinions work. You know, you give an opinion for your client, not for anybody else. So, you know, we should rely on our own opinions and not on what somebody else is providing to us. So.
Thank you, Mary. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, I voted for the cemetery bill because I assumed those legal questions were going to be able to be answered in the grant agreement, but now I'm finding out maybe not. And so I definitely think we need, at least I would feel better knowing ahead of time that everything is legal before I cast a vote.
Robert. Thank you, Robert.
I also agree with that. I would like that legal opinion on each article, at least to make sure it is.
Bob, I can't understand you. I can't hear what you're saying.
Hello, can you hear me? How about now?
I can hear you. Let's go ahead. Sorry.
So, yeah, no, I think we should have the opinion of the legal beforehand. I would tend to lean towards assuming the town council is qualified to have judgment on CPA articles. I would definitely go with them because I don't want to get into a dueling legal opinion down the road using another outside counsel. But I definitely agree we should proceed with that process and have them recommend whether we need a grant agreement or not.
Thank you, Bob. Donna.
So John, I want you to know that even though this is what I do for a living, I feel better with a legal review because I am not a lawyer. So as a committee member, I would feel better if there was legal review up front. As to the mechanism, I mean, I think if Mr. Powers and Miss Eldridge are going to come back and talk to us about the process, I don't understand why we can't just have agreement that CPC applications should be reviewed by legal, whether or not that is, town council or a separate council. I believe it should be town council. I don't know why we can't just come to an agreement over this issue and have it be the way that the CPC operates moving forward versus like having to go to town administration over every single application. I think we should just have a procedure in place, and that should be the procedure that we follow. David, I had sent you again the packet of information that I compiled. It's very large, so I don't know if it got held up in the computer, but with that was also an excellent checklist that the town of Eastham uses for their CPC. And I think at some point we should discuss that and look at it, and maybe adopt some of those practices. So I think the more boots and suspenders and straps that you have in place, the better the outcome, and the more likely that each of us votes knowing exactly what the situation is, and we're not on town meeting floor not feeling 100% sure about any action that we've taken.
Kathy?
Well, I'm not necessarily in favor of spending additional monies for legal expertise that we could get from town council. I think it should be an automatic that CPC applications can be reviewed by legal without, something, an additional layer. It would be in the town's best interest. So I'm not necessarily in favor of our own council, whether it be town council or outside. That's all.
Okay. As far as the chair's opinion is concerned, it doesn't matter to me, quite frankly. This boils down to timing. For the past 3 or 4 years that I've sat on CPC, it's always been a difficult issue. So that would mean that when we have the applications in hand, we send them off to council to have council view them and to get their council's opinion. That's a discussion that you folks will make happen, and you folks will vote. I have no issues with that whatsoever. This particular time around, this is the first time that the Board of Selectmen have allowed CPC to access council. Applicants went through them. Applications went through them after the CPC voted. They sent them to council. I don't know what council does. Again, there's no Esquire after my name. I don't know if they give a cursory review or they go in depth to see what the liability issues are or the legal aspects are. I don't know. But we get them back from council. Then we send them to, the procedure has been to send them to Carol Coppola. She takes that framework from KP Law for the grant agreements, and we work that. And then those grant agreements are sent again out to KP Law. They come back, they go to the Board of Selectmen. Each member of the Board of Selectmen signs them. Then they come back to the CPC. You grant the chair authority to sign for all of you, and I do. Now, I can't anticipate what the legalese are on those grant agreements. I'm not qualified to. So if we want to change the procedure, we can. That's up to the board to do. Is this the direction you want to go? Then the second question would be, do we want outside counsel or not? Again, it doesn't matter to me. It's up to you folks. What I will say is, in the last discussion we had, I leaned more towards outside counsel, and the board counseled me that we don't want to take an adversary position. And I understand it. That's all well and good. So, go ahead, Donna.
So I have a couple of points. One is that I believe, and maybe Mary can confirm this, that what town legal counsel is reviewing is the text of the warrant article, not the qualifications of the applications. They're not even seeing the applications. They're looking at the warrant article and they're making sure that the language in the warrant article is adequate for a town meeting warrant. That's what they're looking at right now. And so that's my first point. My second point is, why don't you ask Attorney Giorgio his opinion on, he's been a legal counsel for an awful long time. He's dealt with a lot of towns. If you're going to have his ear, ask him what he thinks about town council versus CPC's having its own legal counsel. I'd love to hear what he has to say about that. And lastly, I wanted to clarify, early on you said so the Board of Selectmen have not voted on the CPC articles yet. And I thought I heard you say that if they were to vote against something, it would not move forward. I don't think that's...
No, that's not what I said. No, that's
Okay.
not.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because I thought that's what I heard, that that's not the case. It's just that there would be a negative vote from the Board of Selectmen for a CPC article.
In either case, whether it's the Finance Committee or the Board of Selectmen, the article still goes forward, as long as there's a positive motion on town meeting floor. Mary has taught me that one.
Well, it's their warrant, but it's our CPC articles. I guess that's my point.
But there's no requirement. So there's no requirement for them to put forward CPC articles. I know that that's a misconception that they have to, but they technically do not. And that was clarified for us this week on a town clerk's phone call. So strict coming from the from KP Law, actually. So,
Okay.
Thank you, Mary. Elizabeth.
Sorry, I'm new to this. Wait, so if we approved, one of the articles and FinCom doesn't like it and the board and the select board doesn't like it, they cannot put it. And then what happens? That they don't get the money and the article doesn't go through? And
No. Mary, go ahead.
explain,
So,
please.
we were told we had a training this past week, and we were told that CPC articles are not guaranteed to go forward, that they still are subject to selectmen's approval. The only other way, I don't even know if it's possible to put it on as a petition article. We didn't get that far, but that's a whole nother level of the only other means to get it on an agenda on a town warrant would be through a petition article, and I don't know whether that's appropriate for a CPC article, whether we as up to 10 members of the public could actually put it on if it was done timely. But the selectmen, we are told, that do not have to put CPC articles on town meeting warrant.
Elizabeth, anything else on that?
Nothing I should say in public.
Okay, Elizabeth, I want to suggest this for you in particular, because you're a newer member. The CPC came about in '04. That's its inception. It's been in practice since '05, and nothing has ever happened in this particular argument. So it may be tomorrow, it may be next week, but at least there's a history of CPC being supported by the Board of Selectmen. John Ketchum.
So I want to just make sure I understand what was just said. I understood Mary to be saying there's two levels of disapproval that can be applied by the select board. One is to just vote that they don't support an article, but the article just still goes forward. The other is they can vote to not allow an article to go forward.
That's my understanding, John.
Okay, thank you.
FinCom doesn't have that power, right? Though they can just say no, but they don't get to say whether it's on the ballot, right?
That's correct. And it's interesting because at one point, even with the Board of Selectmen, it's, and I'm not going to debate Mary over this. I don't want to get into it tonight. But as I understood it, it was based on what I read, it was almost a courtesy to supply the information to the Board of Selectmen and FinCom. But again, there's no Esquire after my name. Moving on. Any other questions about this?
I always thought that as well. I always thought it was a courtesy, but it came up on a town clerk's call about town meetings, and that was what we were informed.
That's fascinating. Maybe things have changed. I don't know. I can't answer it. So, what's the board's bottom line? What's the board's pleasure? Some of you are going to email me questions to ask the town administrator. Maybe it's to the point where I have a special board meeting after I get those answers for all of you, so that you get the information up front. But other than that, what's the board's pleasure? What do you want to do? When it comes down to the actual articles themselves, do we want time to comprehend what we want to do, more time? Or would you like to take an action tonight to change our general direction? And how will that come about? So we're looking at timing, a point in time. Mary, go ahead.
So I just like, for me, the starting point that I'd like to see happen is for you just to ask these questions of town council when you're meeting with them next. And then I think we can go forward from there once you get some feedback. I don't know how everybody else feels, but that to me sounds like an appropriate starting point.
I agree with Mary.
Okay, Donna.
I agree with Mary. I mean, since we are not going to apply these standards to this round of applications and we have time before the next round of applications come in, I think it, behooves us to do our due diligence on this issue. And, again, the only two that we're going to have questions about and get answers about are going to be C6, the Veterans Home Project, and then HP1 East Harwich Cemetery. So if something comes out of that discussion that, really needs to be addressed upfront prior to town meeting, then we'll have to do that as a committee. And I suspect that would be in writing because town councils always put everything in writing. So, but I do think, just going back to this selectmen's issue, they're often voting on articles based on the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, right? They're not going through all of these applications the way that we are. And so, I mean, that's part of the reason why I think it's important that, you know, we have all of this information prior to making decisions. And once it leaves this committee and then goes to the next bodies that are going to weigh in on it, which is the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and ultimately town meeting.
Just for general off information, Donna, there are a couple of the Board of Selectmen, select people that read the articles and go through them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the majority of them, but there are a couple that I know of that do it.
That
So,
read the applications, David,
yes.
you mean? Yeah.
We provide, one of the things we do is we provide solid copies to administration so that they have the applications in paper, not in electronic form, in front of them. And some of them read them.
That's great. Reading's really important.
Anyway, so my next question would be to the board. After my discussions, and please, you've made a commitment to me tonight about bullet points. Please send them to me so I can ask the relevant questions. After this, after I have that discussion on Tuesday, there's no way I can get together with all of you to give you the information without calling a meeting. And that, Jen, am I correct on that? That would be the following week? Is there enough time? You're muted, Jen. You're muted, Jen.
I was saying, we can't seem to come to a conclusion on April's meeting at this point. I don't know how soon you actually could create something. If you're meeting with the legal on the 16th, I would have to have commitment and everything solid by the 18th on that Thursday to create a new meeting for sometime the week of the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th. That would be
All
the
right,
following.
let me hold it right there. Hold on for a minute.
Okay.
If I were to send out a blast of the information that I have to all the board members and ask the board members not to respond,
You're fine.
I can do that.
Yep, you're just providing information, you're not carrying a vote. So as long as nobody should respond and you just take it as informational.
Okay. That doesn't work into the process of, if there's anything that I believe after reading the information and having the discussion, I send the blast out to you folks. You can send an email to Jen if you think that it's something that we need to call a meeting for and take action. Can I do that?
So I would just say send an informational blast out and,
Right.
put an agenda item on your next meeting regardless. Just put it as an agenda item and then we can talk accordingly. I mean, town meeting's not going to be until when? I heard
May.
Joe
Well-
Joe say 50 some odd days. So you've got time between.
Saturday, May 8th is what it's scheduled for as of now. It's going to be outdoor like it was last year on Saturday, May 8th. And rain date will be the following Saturday, the 15th, because Sunday, the 9th is Mother's Day.
So,
That's what I heard too. You're right.
I mean, you can always calendar a meeting for the end of April and just cancel it if there's nothing to talk about.
Okay. All right.
Well, April's meeting, we don't have to have this because nothing's happened, but we haven't had a status update We have, twice a year, we need a status update from all open CPC project managers. And we were shooting for April at this point because we already missed March for them. We don't have to have it, it's up to y'all, but that's a huge meeting. Quiet.
Dead silence.
I know, y'all don't want to come in
And-
April.
and-
got
And
it.
thank you. I understand what you're driving at, Chan. I'm just trying to figure out a way to, the blast goes out, and if someone thinks, as they read the information, that there's a problem here, then I have to call a board meeting. How do I get that information back to myself?
So,
Is what-
David, I think you're going to know that when you give us the information. I mean, let's
Okay.
be honest.
Okay, all right.
You're going to know when you get the response from town council, and just calendar a meeting. Just do
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
Another thing, Dave, we don't have to have the status updates in April. This whole issue might be more important and more pressing.
It
So
is.
if the committee chooses to.
Don't jump, don't jump.
different-
Jan, don't jump. Let's keep it a status update until we have further information.
All right,
Can't get any more convoluted than this.
yeah.
All right. Is there anything else about this particular subject that any of the members would like to address? We'll start with Joe. I got to make sure Joe hasn't fallen asleep. I
No,
guess
I'm
not.
still here. No, I'm still here. I just, can you hear me, Dave?
I can hear you, Joe, yes.
Okay, I just have to jump off for another conference call, but I heard everything that everyone said, and I know what you're driving towards, and yeah, I'm for that. I'm a little bit dismayed by all the conversation of selectmen and FinCom can actually say no to some of these CPC things that we work so diligently on for the entire year. But then I thought I heard you say the last time that happened was 05, so I'm happy to hear that, because we do an awful lot of work and have a lot of meetings with people to approve this money for the good of the town. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what your meeting is with town council.
Okay, Joe, but just to clarify, Joe, when I used the example for 05,
Yeah.
that's when the CPC actually went into effect. It was conceived
Oh.
in 04, they started funding in 05, and we've never had, since its inception, there hasn't been an issue with selectmen.
Okay, that's very, very encouraging. Okay, good.
Okay.
I'm good then. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Mary?
Okay.
I've said enough.
All right, thank you, Mary. Elizabeth?
I'm fine. I mean, I'm a little, well, we'll know more after you talk to the lawyer.
That's correct, right. Donna?
I have also said enough on this subject.
Don't be so stoic when you say that. Come on. Thank you, Donna.
I make everybody laugh. What are you talking about?
Robert?
I'm good.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Kathy?
I just think we just need to keep the timing in mind, because when you meet with legal counsel, you may not get the answers to some of those questions. They may have to do some research to find out the answers and, form an opinion. So, timing wise, it could push us back a few weeks, and, we could be back to right up until the end of April. So just got to be mindful of that. That's all.
And I understand, Kathy. John?
I have nothing more, thank you.
Okay, what I will say to the entire board is, again, I let the applicants, they're asking for the money, speak for themselves on town meeting floor. But if this particular issue comes up and we have a problem with any one of these applications, the chair's not shy. I have no problem stating that to town meeting floor. I don't know if we can legally pull, but we could take some kind of action with the board's approval. So, Mary,
So David, just to clarify, the only way something gets voted on is if there's on the night of the meeting, is if there's a positive motion going forward. So if the Board of Selectmen and FinCom choose not to make a positive motion and we still support it, we can always, and it's on the warrant, we could make the positive motion. And if we don't want to, we can always express that we've rescinded our vote if we've taken an action, or we can say that we've rescinded our, we move to indefinitely postpone or something to continue it. So there are plenty of mechanisms to do that if needed.
okay. And that, well, again, that'll be a first and it'll, go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I mean, do we have reason to believe right now that there's several articles that are not going to be supported by the Board of Selectmen?
No, we're anticipating the worst. So anyway, all right. As far as the next meeting is concerned, oh, I'm sorry, Jan. At this point, can we move to number 3 and approve the minutes?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, can I have anybody for February 11th, 2021?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of February 11th, 2021, or February 24th. February 24th.
Is there a second?
There's 2 of them. Do February 11th first.
Yeah.
All right, February 11th, 2021.
Right. Second, there's a motion on the floor and a second.
Yes.
All those in favor, roll call vote. Elizabeth,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
Donna,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
David, aye. And Joe, are you still there?
No, he had to bounce.
Okay, he's gone. All right, so let's go to the next one. Approval of the CPC minutes for February 24th, 2021. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll move to approve the minutes, the CPC minutes for February 24th,
Fourth.
2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
And Elizabeth seconded. So all those in favor, roll call vote. David, aye. John,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Donna,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Aye.
Mary,
Aye.
it's a vote. Okay, so the final thing on the agenda is, again, the calendar, the next meeting calendar. And Jan, you want that date as?
April 22. I don't know. Yeah.
Does anybody?
Thursday, April 22nd.
I don't hear any issues. So apparently that's a go.
Well, Mary, I never heard. Can you make that date?
I can make that date, Jan. I was just checking.
Okay. And Bob and Donna, you were unsure whether you could make that date.
I can make the date.
Donna?
I'm gonna do my best, Jan. I just don't have my work commitment committee schedule yet.
Well, at this point, I have quorum.
Yep, you should go ahead.
Okay. All right. I should say this for the whole board. Go ahead, Jim.
Can we set the calendar for the whole year?
Nice try, girl.
Come on, people. You were going to look at y'all. Everyone was going to look at their calendars.
I
So the
can't.
second Thursday of every month is an issue or not an issue?
That's not an issue, but to jump that far ahead is an issue.
We
So
usually do a whole year in advance.
Like I said, nice try, girl. Anyway, moving on.
It's COVID time. Who knows? You can't plan a day in advance, you know?
Elizabeth, you're absolutely right. Okay, are there any agenda points for the next meeting from the board? And I want to start with Donna. Is there anything that you want specifically to discuss?
Well, I guess my question is, do we actually get to see these town meeting articles, or it's completely out of our hands? That's one. And is the actual vote of the committee in the town meeting article?
The answer to that is yes. The answer to the previous question is no. The chair does.
Okay.
That's why the chair is asked for permission to sign. The whole board doesn't sign the articles when they come back.
Are you guys saying articles or the grant agreements?
No, these are the articles, not the grant agreements. These
Okay.
are
All right.
specifically the articles.
They're on the selectmen, in the selectmen's packet on the website. I mean, the way that, you know, they're,
Well, the entire agenda will,
my husband's on FinCom and he's in the other room right now going over them. So you can find them online and see what's being presented to FinCom and the Board of Select.
that's correct. So I'm back to Donna.
I'm fine, David. Thank you.
Quite frankly, Donna, if the information is online, everything is there, and at the next meeting or the meeting of town meeting, the Thursday before, we can have a meeting and discuss it if need be. It's up to you guys. The board is driving CPC, not the chair. The chair's the moderator. So whatever you folks decide to do, that's what we'll do. Okay, Kathy, anything on the next agenda?
I'm good.
John? Robert?
I'm good.
Elizabeth?
I mean, I assume you're gonna put what you learned from the attorney on the agenda, but I would like to know, what Donna raised about getting to, I would like to discuss what happens with grant agreements and whether we get to read them first, whether we get to like approve them or at least put in our 2 cents so that we make sure what we were discussing was covered, something like that.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Mary?
So just to echo what Elizabeth said, if you could just put a space holder on the agenda to talk about your meeting with town council, so that
Right.
then it's agended and that way it's not a problem. If there's something to discuss, we can discuss it, and if not, we pass right over it.
Okay, fair enough. And again, I will send out that blast after that discussion, so you'll have all the information.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else from the board? Donna?
David, I just wanted to thank you for bringing Stuart Saganor in front of the committee. That was excellent. It was so informational, and I just really appreciate it. I think it would behoove the CPC committee to pick a subject each year and avail ourselves of the CPC coalition services to discuss, you know, a topic that, you know, we agree on might be a good educational piece. So I want to thank you for doing that. It was really a great presentation, great meeting. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second,
And all those in favor, roll call vote. Mary?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
John?
aye.
David? Aye. Good night, folks. I'll be in touch.
Thank you. Perfect timing.